Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Construction, Education and Training Authority Ceta Dialogue. My name is Gugule Tuklaba. I'm going to be your moderator for this live webinar. And welcome to every one of you, for all our stakeholders who are out there. I am going to be firstly passing an apology that we do not have the minister today, the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Blade Nzimande. However, the minister is well represented in this webinar, as we're having Mr. Zugile Mvalo, who is the DDG of Skills Development of all the Cetas in the country within the Department of Higher Education. Mr. Zugile Mvalo, we want to welcome you, sir. And importantly as well, we've got Mr. Sabelo Wasa, who's our administrator within the construction Ceta. To kick off, I just want to first state that this is a very important conference and a very important webinar. As you know, that we have been ushered fully by force into the fourth industrial revolution in terms of how things are done these days. We are unfortunately or fortunately having to really live with our new normal. So this is a webinar that really is going to be talking about the very important Ceta. Out of all the 21 Cetas, in my view, this is one of the very important Ceta because it talks to the construction and the building up of our country. We know that South Africa is one such country which is still going to be a construction site for the next 20, 30 years, knowing that we're a developing country and we need to make sure that we truly build our country. So as such, this is a Ceta, in my view, which is so important in driving the economy of this country, especially during this time. We are now living in unprecedented times, in the times that none of us ever knew would ever live in. The COVID-19 pandemic that is upon us. And we are so happy that at least some of us are still alive to be able to pursue the greater vision of South Africa. This era has brought about real challenges with itself. This era has brought about real great opportunities as well. It's a reset button, in my view. We always call it in political economy critical juncture moment. So we believe this is a critical juncture moment where it's a reset button is set, is pressed so that things will change. We are entering a time where we need to be very vigilant and understand how to turn the situation around. And Cetas are at the center, in my view, of such a turnaround, because the old way of doing things is no longer going to be applicable in the future. Business models of organizations, companies world over are changing, and they are changing in line with the new normal that we are going to find ourselves in. But over and above that, we know that construction Ceta truly has had a challenge. As my colleagues will be able to take us through what type of those challenges are. We know that there's been court cases and all sorts of other stuff, but that's not for me to talk about that. However, today's main aim is to make sure that we truly launch a sustainable dialogue that is going to chart the new way forward out of all the things I've just said, in terms of making sure that all our stakeholders of construction Ceta are truly empowered to know what is going to be the new vision going forward. Without any further ado, and with all of those opening remarks from my side as a moderator, I just want to welcome you and tell you that we're going to interact during the session. And our M&G guys are behind the scenes. They will be receiving your questions and will be engaging you on your questions that you may have around the construction Ceta and what you want clarity on and what you really want to know about this very important Ceta. I just want to therefore take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Zugile Mvalo, who is the DDG of the Department of Higher Education, who's going to really take us through. I'm sure all of you, our participants, you've seen the profiles of our guest speakers, And so Mr. Nzugile Mvalo is really one of those very important DDGs in the country. You know, we're talking with Mr. Waza here saying that he's responsible for all the 21 Cetas. He's a man full of, with a pocket full of money. So he's going to talk to us not just about money today, but about really the background to the challenge that the construction Ceta has had and what is really going to be the way forward. Over to you, Mr. Mvalo.
Once again, I see my slides, you know, are being shown in my screen. Is there someone or Sean who can assist me? I see my slides, you know, then I can see them. They're quite very small there.
I think Sean, yeah, there is
That's in order.
It's clear now. That's good.
Got it. Once again, thanks very much, Program Director. And then I must convey, of course, my greetings to the administrator of the construction Ceta, the management in the construction Ceta, very importantly, of course, our stakeholders within the construction Ceta. My presentation is going to deal with a variety of issues. My program director has already made an indication into some of those areas, and I like the fact that he has also touched almost my first slide of this presentation. As you see there, that is what exactly the program director was saying, that COVID-19 pandemic has brought about immediate and unprecedented impact regarding the way we conduct work and skills development. Obviously, the program director has mentioned the lockdowns. The International Labour Organization makes an indication that 94% of the world's workers are living in countries with some sort of workplace closure measures in place, and that as at 17 May 2020, 20% of the world workers lived in countries with required workplace closures for all but essential workers. An additional 69% lived in countries with required workplace closures for some sectors or categories of workers, and a further 5% lived in countries with the recommended workplace closures. Obviously, as I think colleagues will know quite very well, that we did experience, especially during the announcement of the first lockdown, which is the hardcore one, that is alert level 5. Estimates, of course, in South Africa are that under alert level 5, 40% of the workforce was working, whilst under alert level 4, 55% of the workforce was working. Under the current alert level, which is alert level 3, 71% of the workforce is working. Under alert level 2, 94% will be working. And under alert level 1, 100% of the workforce will be working, of course. This sector, we know quite very well that it has been so severely affected by these alert levels, especially your alert level 5 and your alert level 4. These are some of the disruptions, of course, including the court case. The program director has made an indication earlier on to the plans of the administrator and the construction Ceta, as they wanted this session to have been held earlier on 28 February 2020. This time around, the administrator, the Ceta, together with the minister and the department, agreed that this session must continue, as our stakeholders are quite very critical during this period of COVID-19 pandemic. You see there, the importance of this sector, the construction sector in our economy. So we cannot, of course, afford to see it contracting quarter after quarter, as we have observed with the recent gross domestic product, that is GDP figures, released on 30 June 2020 by the Statistician General, that since the fourth quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020, the industry growth has been negative at 5.9%. That was in the last quarter of 2019, and in the first quarter, of course, of 2020 by minus 4.7%. We have consequently also in this sector seen the loss of about 7,000 jobs. Comparing the fourth quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020, you'll see the numbers there. That in the first quarter, in the fourth quarter of 2019, we had about 1.3 million people employed, and you see now that number has gone a bit down. If you see 1.343 million, that is in the first quarter of 2020. This is what we refer to as a crisis before crisis, because that did not take into account the national state of disaster, which commenced early in March. This was, as I said, a crisis that we know that since the declaration of COVID-19 pandemic, national state of disaster, and the risk-adjusted strategy regulation, this sector was one of the most affected, as it comprised of very important subsectors, of course, in our economy, such as building construction, built environment professions, roads and civil construction, and materials manufacturing. So we need then, therefore, this sector, especially during and post-COVID-19 pandemic, as government seeks, amongst others, to mobilize the entire society around an infrastructure-led recovery, with new investment, of course, in areas such as energy, water and sanitation, roads and bridges, human settlements, health and education, digital infrastructure, and public transport. To achieve significant job creation multipliers, the emphasis will be, of course, on localization, including maximizing the use of South African materials and construction companies, as well as labor-intensive methods. Your role then, therefore, is quite very central and critical in growing the South African economy, especially through skills development within this sector. So it is quite then obvious to all of us that there will be no real economic recovery without a real investment in the country's infrastructure, as this is critical for both employment generation and growing the South African economy, which is currently projected that is going to be contracting by 7.2%. That will be 2020. And then, of course, there is some recovery that is anticipated in 2021 by about 2.6% and by 1.5% in the subsequent years. That will be 2022 as well as 2023. Therefore, the construction sector is expected to contribute so dearly regarding these projections, especially as we go forward to 2021 as well as 22 and 2023. In our own national development plan, we of course projected unemployment to decrease to 14% in 2020. But you know quite very well that current unemployment stands at 30.1% as in the first quarter of 2020. And if you look into the same quarter in 2019, meaning therefore that was the first quarter of 2019, you'll see that unemployment stood at 27.6%. Whilst of course the biggest challenge of the country, youth unemployment, especially for those between the ages of 15 and 24 years, risen from the first quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020 from 55.2% to 59%. This remains our critical challenge that we need to confront, and we're expecting, of course, that the construction sector will be playing a very big role in this regard. As stakeholders in the construction sector, we must all embrace our future, and we must make it work, especially as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and seeking to recover the socio-economic fabric of our society. The NDP makes an important submission that South Africa belongs to its entire people, and the future of our country is our collective future. Making it work is our collective responsibility. All South Africans seek a better future for themselves and their children. As you see then here is almost summarizing what I've just said. If you look, for example, there you see your 7.1. So is the total population of the unemployed, meaning then therefore all those people who are able to work, 7.1 million. Those who are employed by the first quarter of 2020, it's about 16.4 million. And then if you add together your labor force, it is going to give you 23.5 million. And you'll see then totally on top 38.9 million. Those are the people between the ages of 15 and 64 years. Then normally those are the people who are or who can work. And then you just see also there in my right, your 15.4. That 15.4 is your not economically active population. The majority, of course, there you'll see that it's your students in that 15.4. Then we look here. I've made an indication earlier of National Development Plan targets. As you know, that I made an indication that we were projecting that by 2020 unemployment will be at 14%, and then you see there the red one, 16.1%. That is the deficit, meaning which then therefore that we've got a huge challenge there, because if we move from 30.1% to 14%, then the difference, of course, would be 16.1%. In 2030, by 2030, we're expecting or we're projecting unemployment to decrease to 6%. And then you'll see there as well, 24.1%. That will be the difference between the current unemployment and your 2030 projection regarding to unemployment. Then if you go to the next slide, you'll see there, we're trying to make a distinction between the youth, especially between the ages of 15 and 24, as well as the 25 and 34. And then you'll see the top one, as from January, March 2015, there's been an ascendancy. You just see by January, March 2018, it just went down, but then it's getting up, from January, March 2019, it was 55.2%. And then by March this year, meaning the first quarter, unemployment of young people between the ages of 15 and 24 is standing at 59%. I can also indicate that if you look into those who are not in employment and education and or training, they are about 3.4 million, the same cohort of young people between the ages of 15 and 24. Then you see then, your 25 to 34. Then that in as much as there is a high unemployment as well there, but then you see the bigger difference between those between 15 and 24 and 25 and 34. Then it remains then the challenge for all of us, especially in this sector, to deal with this challenge. Okay. Then my program director has made an indication that the Ceta was placed under administration. We see there that on the 3rd February 2020, the minister published the government gazette through the Director General, where he placed the construction sector under administration in terms of Section 15, subsection 2 of the Skills Development Act, read with subsection 1 and subsection 4, and appointed then Mr. Sabelo Wasa as the administrator for a period of 12 months from the date of the publication. You'll agree with me that the minister reluctantly places any Ceta under administration. As of now, I can share that it's only the construction Ceta that is under administration out of all 21 Cetas. And this was further necessitated when serious allegations and counter allegations were ventilated in the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Innovation, relating, amongst others, to governance failures and gross financial mismanagement in the sector. And of course, all the committees of parliament, it's public. So that is of public record, and it was live in the parliamentary channel. The role of the minister as an executive authority is to exercise his powers and the responsibilities in order to ensure that the Ceta undertakes its fiduciary responsibilities with the necessary care, due diligence, and skill. The minister therefore calls to all of you as key stakeholders in the construction sector, that making it work must be our collective responsibility. I should think the session of today is also a signal to that importance. There is no better time than now to work closely with each other as we navigate through this COVID-19 pandemic, and to prioritize turning each and every workplace into training space within, of course, the risk-adjusted strategy regulations. Well, also another important area is a skills development holiday. The President of the Republic of South Africa, on the occasion of further economic and social measures in response to COVID-19 pandemic on 21 April 2020, stated, amongst others, that in addition to existing tax relief measures, we will also be introducing a 4-month holiday for companies' skills development levy contribution. I must say, of course, that is a matter, immediate after the announcement as well, the minister took up with the president, including, of course, social partners such as organized business and organized labor, as we strongly believe that companies which can afford to pay skills levies should have been allowed to do so. We all know that this skills levy is meant for skills development, especially during and post COVID-19. Our records, of course, as of now, up to date, are telling us that this process has been commenced with already by the South African Revenue Services in implementing the presidential announcement of 21st April 2020. The Ceta grant regulation is another matter, of course, that we felt is important that we raised during this session. The Ceta grant regulation case, mainly, I should think some of us in the sector will know that the case was set on 21 August 2018 in the Labour Court, and judgment was delivered in minister's favor on 31st March 2018. The Business Unit South Africa appealed against the judgment. The matter was heard once again on 20 August 2019 in the Labour Appeal Court, with the judgment delivered on the 16th October 2019, setting aside the Regulation 4, Sub-Regulation 4 of the Ceta grant regulations, which determines the mandatory grant of 20%. The Office of the State Attorney, of course, advised the department immediately after the judgment that as the matter stands, it means that Regulation 4, sub-regulation 4 simply falls to the wayside. So the grant regulations must be interpreted and applied as if there is no regulation for a sub-regulation 4. This implies then to all of us that all other regulations and sub-regulations, they remain intact. Well, as I conclude, the department once again is appealing to all stakeholders, especially in this important sector of our economy, that as we open workplaces in terms of the COVID-19 risk-adjusted strategy regulation, let us prioritize skills development, which was the intention, amongst others, of the President's announcement of the skills development levy holiday. Learnerships, I should think it's quite very important also to make this indication that learnerships and apprenticeships in particular have a high level of absorption in the labor market, whilst work integrated learning ensures that learners are afforded an opportunity to complete their qualifications, whether it's in universities or in colleges, where the work integrated learning is embedded in the curriculum. Because you know that there are those programs whereby in order to complete it, and then there is that element of work integrated learning. So then that is why the department and the minister, we are appealing to all employers, especially in this important sector, that we really prioritize, our workplace-based learning programs, especially amongst others, your learnerships, apprenticeships, as well as work integrated learning. So the very last slide there, once again, working with you as you are directly at the coalface of skills development delivery, it is our greatest pleasure. Once again, skills development remains a critical game changer in our quest for an inclusive economic growth trajectory. Together, let us make it work. Thanks very much, Program Director, as well as important stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mvalo, for I hope I'm clear. Thank you so much, Mr. Mvalo, for the presentation, for really taking us through, especially giving us the background to the issues that we touched on as we started off, and as well as just emphasizing the importance of this Ceta. This Ceta is crucially important, as I said when we're opening. We know that the President emphasized on it through really talking about the infrastructure development, which is mainly going to be driven through the construction Ceta. So I think I see a lot of questions that many of our stakeholders are having. However, we're going to have a way of engaging with those questions afterwards. For now, the process will be, we need to move to Mr. Wasa to basically give us his own presentation and just take us through the entire process of his presentation as an administrator. I must again mention that we are going to have presentation of our two guest speakers disseminated to everyone who is part of the audience today. So I see there's questions that can get the presentations, all of that. Yes, definitely we'll be able to disseminate the presentations. Let me, without any therefore waste of time, hand over to Mr. Sabelo Wasa to just take us through his own presentation.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good morning to all the stakeholders of the construction Ceta, and good morning to Mr. Mvalo, and thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Mvalo. I must emphasize the point that I have had an occasion of having a chat with the minister, and indeed the minister would have loved to have addressed this session today, but unfortunately he is ill. But thank you very much, Mr. Mvalo, for all the facts and figures that you have given. Just to say that as a way of starting to all our stakeholders, that it would have been nice if, as this is the first engagement that I have with you as stakeholders of Ceta, that we were in the same venue and I was able to look you in the eyes and talk to you directly. Unfortunately, the situation that we find ourselves in as a country and as a world is that we should devise other ways and means of engaging with each other. I mean, it could have been easier for me as the administrator who is wielding a lot of power within the sector to simply keep quiet and continue doing the work as I see it, because I have got all the powers of the accounting authority as well as the executive powers as the CEO currently. So I could have simply gone ahead alone and do what I think should be done, and according to the SLA that I've signed with the department, as well as the government gazette that Mr. Mvalo had referred to. But I thought that that would not have been a progressive way of doing things. There is a saying that says, if you go alone, you go quicker, but if you go together, you go very far. And I've chosen that trajectory of going together with you as the stakeholders of Ceta. What I want to do today in my presentation is to just talk a little bit about what Mr. Mvalo spoke about as well, and that is the challenges that we have been having. I was appointed on the 3rd of February through a government gazette that Mr. Mvalo had referred to. And I had started on that same day. However, as Mr. Mvalo had already mentioned, the Labour Court on the 25th of February delivered a judgment which had set aside the decision of the minister to suspend the accounting authority of the construction sector, and the administration itself, and my appointment as the administrator. So that led to me sitting on the sidelines for about 3 weeks after the 25th of February. And as soon as we were able to come back, because the minister had appealed the judgment, so we were allowed to come back whilst the matter was being considered. And then the president announced the lockdown, the hard lockdown, level 5. And as a result of that, everything came to a standstill, really. However, not everything has come to a standstill within this Ceta, because we continued to work even at the hard lockdown of level 5. The team, especially the finance team, had been hard at work because we had a number of issues that had been raised by various stakeholders that were not happy with us on a number of levels. The learners were unhappy about the stipends that have not been paid. Training providers were not happy that they were not being paid. Employers were not happy about various issues. So everybody in the sector was affected by the work that we have been doing. And as a result of that, before the lockdown took effect, after the announcement, we had taken certain decisions. One of those decisions was that we will be continuing paying stipends, even at the time that the learners would not be attending training, because we're paying on the basis of the registers that we get of learner attendance and all of that. And I have taken a decision that we are going to be paying throughout the lockdown, despite the fact that the learners are not attending. That we are going to be paying training providers, we are going to be paying employers what we should be paying them. And this was before even the minister announced that Cetas must pay learners even if they don't attend training. But we went further to also pay the training providers even when they were not doing any work, and therefore were not necessarily entitled to admin fees that we normally pay them. So we said, but we don't want a situation that after the lockdown is lifted, then we no longer have training providers that will be able to do the work. So we have been doing this kind of work. What I want to do, Chair, quickly is to take the stakeholders through our mandate as the administration team. There are four main issues that we are expected to deal with by the minister. As Mr. Mvalo has mentioned, the minister had identified number of governance gaps that have been there, and I have been asked to then deal with these governance issues. Those governance issues would lead to and everything that we will be doing. In fact, as an administration team, the end game is to hand this organization back to its stakeholders through the accountable authority, which must be elected again and must run this organization as it is the case with other cities. So we are looking at all the issues that led to the problems that made the minister to take the decision of placing the Ceta under administration. One of those things, of course, would be to appoint the CEO and the new accounting authority. When we're done with reviewing the policies, the constitution of the Ceta, and also one of the important things that we are doing at the moment is to propose to the minister that we set up chambers for the construction sector for obvious reasons. From where I'm sitting, I think that it is important that all the subsectors of construction sector should really be paid attention to. And the way that, as we have observed, the way that things have been going previously is that the board, of course, would have been elected from the key sectors of subsectors of the construction. But there are those that might not have been given an opportunity to really have their views and matters that are of importance to them attended to. So one of the things that I am proposing to the minister is that we have the chambers so that we really pay attention to all the subsectors. One of the important things for me is that those people that are in the informal sector within the construction space are also given an opportunity to be a subsector that will be listened to, because these are the people that you would find holding boards next to the hardware stores. Some of them are helping in our houses as plumbers, as electricians, as carpenters, and so on. But these people are not certificated. So we have to find a way of getting these people also having a voice within the construction sector, and find a way of getting them away from not being certificated to being certificated. Especially that, as Mr. Mvalo has mentioned, that government is looking at restarting the economy post-COVID-19 using infrastructure. I have had some discussions with the minister, for instance, and insights with me that one of the things that the department is looking at doing is to build student accommodation over the next 10 years, and government is looking at investing north of 100 billion rand for that venture. And for us to really change the fortunes of those that are at the lowest level of the economic food chain, like people that are every day trying to make ends meet while they don't have the certification of doing that work, that we make them to be mainstreamed through cooperatives and other ways to participate in these big infrastructural programs. So we're looking at getting those to be part of the chambers that would be part of the construction sector. The other aspect, of course, when you are having an administration process like we are having within the construction sector, it means that construction sector is in business. However, there were things that might not have gone right previously. I'm not intending to dwell much on those, but the minister had asked me specifically to perform some forensic investigations to look at various matters that had worried him. And you would know that before the administration itself, there was an investigation that was conducted by the National Skills Authority, which led to the National Skills Authority recommending to the minister that a forensic investigation must be conducted, which was conducted by Kobodo, and the report was concluded. And one of the things that I've been asked to do was to implement that report, and which I have done to a greater extent. You would have heard that a number of senior officials of construction sector are placed under suspension, and we are busy with the disciplinary processes as we speak. Then there are a number of strategic compliance matters that we also needed to attend to, so that we comply with the criteria and targets set in the National Skills Development Strategy. The issues relating to this SSP, the strategic plan, the APP, and the budget. And I will speak a little bit about the SSP that we currently have, and to what an extent this SSP is really helping us to drive skills development within the sector. So I'm also charged to making rules relating to financial matters, procurement, and admin matters in line with the law. There are a number of things. Of course, you would know that one of the frustrations that our stakeholders are raising with us on a daily basis is the fact that our payment process is a bit onerous, and it takes a long time, and we keep on losing documents, and as a result of that, there would always be delays with the payments, but also there are issues relating to what happens after a project has been allocated and that project must commence. There are a lot of delays, and I will talk to those issues as to what is it that we are doing in dealing with them. Then I was also charged with stabilizing the organization. Of course, the organization has experienced a number of disturbances. You would recall that sometime towards the end of last year, there was a big go-slow with our staff as a result of some of the things that have gone horribly wrong and the board having taken certain decisions that led to staff members reacting in that manner. And I had to then come in and stabilize the organization. As I've mentioned, that people were also complaining bitterly about non-payment of stipends, of their fees, and so on. All of those things I will be talking to in terms of what it is that we have done to stabilize the organization. The last point would be to report regularly to the department. We have already prepared and submitted a diagnostic report which covers all the different areas of the organization, and we have shared our observations with the department. We have prepared a work plan of how are we going to be responding to these issues. And also we are meeting with Mr. Mvalo and his team on a continuous basis to share issues and ideas that we are having. We have identified risks on the implementation of this plan. One of those obviously is COVID-19. COVID-19 has posed a huge risk in implementing our programs. As you know, that construction sector might not be quite the same as other sectors. And the way that we then deal with the skills development in the construction sector is not gonna just be easy to just put an e-learning portal or something for our learners to start learning through e-learning, but construction sector requires a practical work to be undertaken by our learners, and it becomes difficult to do that work on e-learning. You still have to have a direct contact with the learners. So these are the opportunities that then present us, with this COVID-19 challenge that we have. So we're looking at the ways and means of dealing with these challenges posed by COVID-19. So at the end of it all, we are expected to submit a closeout report to the department, so that I know one of the issues that I have encountered with people that I have interacted with is that there you go again, Ceta is under administration again. You recall that around 2011, construction Ceta was placed under administration, and people are saying, yeah, well, it's under administration again, so what? I know that people perhaps have got a right to feel that way. However, what I would like to say to you is that I have been involved with a couple of these administrations. I was involved in the public service Ceta at some point. I had been involved in a services Ceta when it was placed under administration. So I've got a fair idea of what happens during these administrations. And what I'm asking you as stakeholders of construction Ceta is to give me an opportunity to really try and assist this Ceta to get back to where it is supposed to be. And not only that, but show results, tangible results that will make this Ceta not to be under administration again through the things that we are proposing to do. So as a result of that, I just want to take you through a journey that we would like to take with you going forward. Of course, as I said, that we had submitted a diagnostic report to the department, and that was under assessment phase. So we have 4 phases that we have decided to go for. Assessment phase, stabilization phase, operational effectiveness phase, and handover phase. As I said, that the end game is to hand over this Ceta back to its stakeholders for them to run the organization like other sectors are doing. So in the assessment phase, I will talk a brief about the observations that we have made. I just want to go straight to that assessment phase. There are key observations that we've made. One of those is that our SSP, the sector skills plan, needs an overhaul, really. The reason being that, of course, nobody could have anticipated COVID-19 and its effect. One of the things that Mr. Mvalo spoke about at length was the effect of the COVID-19 on the economy. One of the things that we have observed, of course, is that smaller construction companies would most probably would not open their doors again. And it means that we will be losing that revenue over and above the 4 months break or levy holiday that the president had announced. And therefore, we need to then revise our skills, sector skills plan to respond to that. But more importantly, what is going to happen after COVID-19? As Mr. Mvalo had mentioned, that government is thinking of kickstarting the economy using the infrastructure development. And then the sector becomes the important sector to deal with that. And therefore, what is important to me is that we refocus the sector. What has been happening, as one of the observations that we've made, is that slowly skills development is being replaced by job creation. Instead of us focusing on skills development, we are focusing on pushing numbers or that proves that we are able to create jobs. That might have some space, but our major reason to exist as the Ceta is to drive skills development within the sector. And this is, you would see in the numbers of the work that we have been doing. We have been doing a lot of short skills programs, which are meant to really get people to be having some form of income. And as I'm saying, that might have its space, but I think it's defocusing us a little bit. And therefore, the skills development skills sector plan of the construction sector needs to be really revised to attend to the skills development issues. So my focus really is for us to do certificated deal with certificated programs in the main than having the short skills program. And I'm not saying that we would not have the short skills program programs, but we must focus on what is important in developing skills within the sector. One of the important things that are missing in the sector skills plan as it stands now is the importance of professionals in the built environment space. And is one of the things that I am keen to really drive very strongly. I have had engagements already with a number of people in this regard, including the CPE, because it is important that we really, and Ceta has been giving people bursaries. You know, we've got a number of learners that we are giving bursaries through 2 bursary schemes that we have. We've got what we call Tapeloma Dibeng bursary scheme, which started last year. And we also have been having bursary scheme that we're doing through DGs. However, these bursary allocations that we are making are not articulating, for instance, to the candidacy program. And after candidacy program as well, we lose all the learners. We don't know what happened to people that qualify as architects and quantity surveyors and so on. And I'm saying that should change. As we give people bursaries, these people must continue to then go into our candidacy program and go through the candidacy in the different areas and be able to then qualify in the areas that they are pursuing. And after they qualify, we must have an alumni of Ceta that will come back and give and enrich our programs in the professional space so that we are wiser as the Ceta. My background, for instance, is accounting and auditing. I'm not a built environment professional at all. And Ceta is not employing those anyway, because there are those people in the sector. And therefore, we as administrators must be informed by professionals in terms of what it is that they want to do with this sector in terms of the skills development. And therefore, it becomes important that our sector skills plan talks to this issue. As I'm sitting here, for instance, I've been asking for this information. I have met with the BBC, BE, Black Business Council Built Environment. I have met with the CBE, as I've mentioned. And I know that this information is somewhere, but is old. I don't know, for instance, how many architects do we have in the country, and how many must we have? How many quantity surveyors do we have, and how many must we have? And what are the demographics of these different professionals that we have? Because transformation is central to what we have to do. And we know that construction sector is not one of those very transformed sectors. And therefore, it's important that as we drive transformation, we know exactly what it is that we are supposed to be doing. And therefore, our sector skills plan is lacking in this area. And I'm taking steps to overhaul the sector skills plan. And again, we will be engaging with you in this regard so that we get your assistance. And as you also submit your WSPs and ATRs, we would like to improve the quality of this, that they are not submitted for purposes of complying and for people to get mandatory grants. But we pay attention to the quality, because the quality will then help us to improve our research and therefore improve our sector skills plan. One of the other observations that I would like to talk about is this concentration of the Ceta stakeholders is obviously in Gauteng at about 35%, followed by KwaZulu-Natal at 19%, and provinces like Western Cape and Eastern Cape and others then follow at lower percentage, less than 10%. But the way that we then allocate projects do not really reflect this concentration of stakeholders. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit was that 75% of all Ceta beneficiaries are trained in municipalities across the country, with the main focus in Free State. I'm not sure what was informing that, but we've got north of 12,400 learners across our system, and of 8,000, north of 8,000 of those learners are trained in municipalities. As to whether the municipalities have got the proper capacity to train these learners, I am not sure. For instance, if you look at the people that are trained in Free State, for instance, north of 4,000 learners are trained in Thabo Mafutsanyane district municipality. I don't know how they are being trained at that big number there, but that is what is happening at the current moment. And as a result of that, one of the key stakeholders that I have identified and I have engaged with already is SALGA, because if we are going to be training so many people in municipalities, SALCA must play a role in making sure that municipalities have got proper capacity to deliver the training that we require for our learners. Just one of the issues that I want to share with you is that Ceta spent north of 2 billion rand in 2019-2020. And 1.1 billion rand of this is 1.1 billion rand is spent on projects which involved or involves 12.4 thousand learners as beneficiaries in different pathways. However, there is a disjuncture between what we have spent and what we are having as outcomes of our spending. So we have got a big challenge between a big gap between what we are spending and what our results are. And colleagues would know, and stakeholders would note that in the past while, Ceta had been getting clean audit reports from the Auditor General. I'm not sure that I'm agreeing with the Auditor General on that, having been exposed to what I've been exposed to within the Ceta. One of those things is that Ceta would allocate work or projects to different training providers, employers, and so on. And then after this commence with the delivery of projects, then some of these people would then apply for change requests, and they change what they have been previously allocated to something else, but you don't amend the APP to reflect that. And despite that fact, Auditor General would be happy with the performance of construction Ceta. And last year, for instance, Auditor General confirmed that Ceta had performed at 92%, and I don't see that, in fact, in the real facts as I have looked at them. For instance, with regard to bursary schemes, I mean, one of the things that the minister had announced during lockdown was that university students and TVET college students would not be going back to conduct tuition, except for few, for a long time. And therefore, we were called upon to assist the learners, those that we are assisting with bursaries, assist them with tools like laptops and data, so that they are able to access classes and so on. And this has taken me a long time to establish as to how many bursary holders are we funding through universities. And we have not been having this information readily available. I had to get an expert to look at the data that we are having, cleanse that data and all of that. And we have been having huge challenges with really getting to know how many people we are funding through universities, and in which universities and TVET colleges are these people at. Now, I know that having been involved with these administration processes, Auditor General, of course, would increase their risk assessment of the organization, and they are likely to give you a negative audit opinion because we are under administration. But because you're also sharing and being open about what you are picking up, and that's unfortunate part about it, that as you are open about what you have picked up, you are also getting yourself a negative audit opinion. One of the also issues that we have observed is that quality assurance within the construction sector was systematically made not to function. And as a result of that, I know that many of the stakeholders would have challenges relating to accreditation. I know that there is a lot of allegations of corruption that has been taking place in this space, where people are buying accreditations from our own staff members. And I am taking a very strict and strong line against these activities. And everybody that has been found to have participated in these activities will be dealt with accordingly. And we know that most of the stakeholders have been struggling to get certificates, even for people that have completed training. We have been very slow in getting out the certificates. I know that the situation has improved significantly, but I know that there are still those that have not been able to get certificates, and we are working on that with NEMP and QCTO, and colleagues would be happy soon with the progress that we have been making in this regard. The stabilization phase, there are a number of things that we have done to stabilize the organization, despite the disruptions of the court judgment that I've mentioned to and the COVID-19. As I've said that we have reviewed the SSP, and we are in a process of strengthening it. We have commissioned data verification and cleansing for bursaries and other pathways. We have suspended a number of staff members that had been involved in wrongdoing, allegedly, and we're busy with the process of disciplining. I have engaged with a number of stakeholders already, not to the extent that I would have loved, because of the limitations that we have been having of COVID-19. But of course, we have had an engagement with the portfolio committee. We have had an engagement with SALCA. We have had an engagement with CPE. We have had an engagement with Black Business Council, Black Built Environment. We have had an engagement with SAWIC, CIDB. We have met with NEHAU a number of times, representing staff internally. That's the one stakeholder that I have met close to 20 times now in dealing with a number of things. One of the things that we have done as well is to set up a portal for stakeholders to engage directly with my office, and I have built a capacity in the office to really attend to stakeholder issues and be able to quickly respond to the issues that are pertinent to stakeholders. This portal is up and running, and I'm sure that most of the stakeholders would already know about this portal. And I would like to engage with stakeholders directly using this portal. One of the things that we have established this portal for is for us to, as we're reopening slowly the training despite the COVID-19 challenge, that we are able to understand what the needs of the learners are, because now learners would have to have PPE if they attend classes. They would have to use public transport under certain conditions, and what is it that they must do when they see that public transport that they are using is not safe, and all of those things. So we want to have that direct engagement with learners so that we understand what their needs are. We also want to understand what we can assist employers on, because I think that the work that the employers are doing is critical for Construction Ceta. And as a result of that, this part of the stakeholders of Construction Ceta is the one that I want to really closely engage with, because the law is very onerous on the part of employers in terms of creating a safe environment for people under your employ. And our learners under their employ are benefiting from employers that are really taking their role very seriously of creating a safe environment for our learners. And therefore, I understand and I sympathize with the employers that sometimes we don't really pay the attention that we must pay to the employers, because these are the people that are opening their employment, their workplaces for the training of our learners. And the money that we give them for this work is very minimal. And I would really like to engage with the employers to understand their pains in this regard. And also, we would like to understand as to what are the effects of this COVID-19 on getting them back to training our learners. And we are willing to really assist in whatever way that we can to get them to be a little bit comfortable in accommodating our learners. Training providers, we know now that if you had one class with 20 learners, you most probably won't be able to continue with that. You either have to have more training facilities or you have to rotate learners, and therefore it means that you would have to have more time for the facilitators that you need to pay for. And we want to engage with you training providers in that regard. And that's why we have created this portal. And I hope that you will use this portal. The learners will use it, training providers, employers, and everybody else who would like to engage with us will definitely use this portal. We are continuously reporting, as I've mentioned, to the minister and the department. We are overhauling our bursary scheme schemes, both the DG and as well as the Tapelopati Bank. What I want to say to you stakeholders, so that you don't get a surprise in this regard, I have decided that this thing of us giving bursaries through DG is not going to continue because it is not helping us in any way. And I am setting up a reference group made up of very senior people within the sector, as well as in other sectors, to assist us with overhauling these bursary schemes. As I'm saying that these bursary schemes, the learners that we are funding through these bursary schemes must articulate to our candidacy program and then to our alumni, which must then support us in terms of the work that we're doing in developing skills further and increasing professions or professionals within the construction sector. One of the important things that we have identified is that if we are supporting previously disadvantaged learners, it means that our focus should really be assisting Black universities to start having built environment faculties, which is very limited at this stage. And you would have seen at some point that, for instance, Walter Sisulu University was given north of 170 million to start an engineering department. And they decided at some point to redirect those funds to buy student accommodation. And this is something that as Construction Ceta we want to be involved in with universities, because if you're going to take somebody from Nongoma and go and place this person in the University of Cape Town, and you don't provide support to this learner, you are setting this learner up for failure. Yes, we're giving them the money. We are giving them about 80,000 rand per learner through these bursary schemes. but we are expecting them to pass at the end of the year. But during the year, we're not providing any support. And as a boy from rural Alice myself, who went to study at University of Port Elizabeth at some point, I was overwhelmed by the big city, not knowing what to do. And on the other hand, I was expected to pass. That is a very difficult thing to do. The balance is very difficult there. So one of the things that this reference group that I'm setting up to deal with the bursary scheme is going to be doing is to really set up clear processes of how do we support the learners that we are giving bursaries to, so that we increase the chances of them passing. We know that the throughput rates at universities in first year is as low as 30%. And therefore, if we are not going to be providing support to learners, we will not be able to support them properly and be in a position to get or give them a proper opportunity to pass and create professionals that we so desperately need in the construction space. One of the things that we want to do as well is to defocus Ceta from pushing out numbers and strengthen the monitoring and evaluation within the organization. You know, we have been doing something that we should not have been doing really. That, as I said, that we are mainly employing people here who are administrators, people who are coming from other professions. But we have been monitoring and evaluating work that is done by professionals who are leading in our skills development. But we have no idea of what it is that is supposed to be done in producing a professional, because we're not professionals. So one of the things that we are focusing on now is to get people who know what it is that is involved in producing a quantity surveyor. And those people must be the ones that are helping us with the monitoring and evaluation, for instance, in our country's program. So that is one of the things that we are looking at doing. And we are reviving as well our quality assurance, because you know that quality assurance is the heart of the Ceta system. So that is something that we are looking at. One of the observations that we have made, and we are doing something about it, is that despite the fact that we're spending north of 2 billion rand in 2019-2020, but we're doing this manually. Most of the work that we're doing here is manual. Project management work that we are doing is manual, and therefore we are wasting a lot of time, and we're not getting proper reports. Our data here is in disarray, to say the least. We contracting within Ceta gets to be delayed. People get to be allocated projects, and then we take months, and during that process, they lose learners that they would have recruited to participate in their programs. And this is because of our contracting process. I mean, we've got a 3-way contracting process, but we give work to an employer, and an employer then would have to, we employ training providers for that employer, and then they recruit learners, and then we still contract with the learners, but we give the money to employers. Employers expected to pay other people, and this has created a number of problems, and I have instructed our legal department to simplify the contracting, and also this thing of having to sign addendums every year. You know, you get to be allocated a 3-year program, apprenticeship, and then you only enter into a contract for 1 year, and then for next year you have to sign an addendum, and then the following year you have to sign an addendum, and that creates a problem as well with our with our accounting and other things that we have to deal with. So we are changing this way of doing things. We are overhauling our payment process. As I have indicated, that this has been onerous. People have been highly frustrated by it, and we're finding a way of overhauling that. We are establishing the rules for chambers, as I've already mentioned. We are one of the important things that I have observed is that there has been a culture within the organization of treating stakeholders with contempt, and this is something that I am working very hard to change. We'll find out that staff members are responding to stakeholders anyhow, and I'm trying to run away from going to court with stakeholders. I mean, if you have allocated a learner a bursary and then you don't give the money, and the learner takes you to court, you still want to defend yourself for what? You have allocated this person a bursary. Now you're not paying the money. The person is frustrated, has done everything. Then the person decides to go to court to enforce the organization to comply with the contract that they have signed. But you still want to defend that. So this is something that I have instructed my team to start working differently on. I have appointed a Professor Mguni, who is a change management specialist. And one of the reasons for this is that I would like stakeholders to be dealt with differently, and that my line is not to go to court with our stakeholders unless it is absolutely necessary to do so. We're settling legal matters amicably and avoiding to go to court, as I said. And I mean, we're looking at other ways. I mean, we have started to go for arbitrations rather than going to courts with those that you know, have taken us to court. And we one of the very disappointing things that I must also share with you, colleagues, is that when we took the decision that we are going to pay learners, despite the fact that they might not be attending, we had to pay, of course. We're not paying the learners directly in the main. We're paying the training providers, and in some instances the employers. And there are training providers, unfortunately, that have not paid the money over to learners. And as a result of that, there are learners that have gone through, you know, the lockdowns, especially the hard lockdown, without getting their stipends, despite the fact that Ceta had paid the money. The money is over, and most of these training providers have disappeared. We have been trying to contact them. We have written letters. We have done all sorts of things, and now, unfortunately, we are taking them to court to enforce them to comply with the legal requirements in this regard. As I've mentioned, that the forensic investigations are underway on various areas. Of course, the COVID-19 circumstances are putting a lot of different spin to our training as we know it. So I've already mentioned that we are doing some things to get to assist learners, training providers and employers. One of the things that we would like to do really is to focus on quality over quantity. We would like to know, for instance, through the evaluation exercise that we will be doing, to understand what happens to our learners after they have completed the training with us. Are the employers absorbing them? And if not, what are the reasons? What is it that we must do to revise our training to respond to the requirements of the employers? Those that start their businesses after training, are their clients happy? And if they are not happy, what are the things that we should be doing to change that situation? We want to make the employers, as I've mentioned earlier, that as they open their workplaces, that is worth their while. We're focusing on strengthening research, contracting with correct parties and simplifying contracting is very important, as I've already mentioned. We're strengthening the project management capacity within the organization so that we find a way of improving the way that we are dealing with issues. The last process or last phase is the handover phase. As I've mentioned that we will be reviewing the constitution and we'll come back to you on the things that we are proposing, and of course the minister will have to approve all of this. We will be appointing the CEO and the minister will be appointing the accounting authority at least 3 months before the end of the administration period. So at least the last 3 months of my term in office will be coexisting with the accounting authority, newly appointed accounting authority. And then by that time, we're hoping that the chambers will be operating, and we will be submitting a closeout report as the administration. As the chairperson has mentioned that we're intending to share this presentation with you, and I'm not going to talk to this slide. This slide is just giving you the details of what I have said in this presentation. The most difficult effects that we have of the COVID-19 is the impact that this thing have on our revenue. Whilst we still have to implement the APP. Mr. Mvalo had spoken to grant regulations judgment that has been having a difficulty in our planning because we don't know, for instance, or we did not know whether we should budget on 50% or budget on 20%. So that has been having an effect on us. And then that announcement by the president of the 4 months holiday over and above the difficulties that the construction sector had already been experiencing. So the revenue is under pressure, and we still have to deliver skills development within the sector. So that is the balance that we are currently trying to play, and we would really appreciate it if our stakeholders were to be involved and share their ideas with us, so that as we traverse this uncharted territory caused by COVID-19 and other challenges, we have your support and confidence as our stakeholders. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and apologies for having taken a bit of time, but I thought that it was important to share these things with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wasa. I think you've really done an extensive presentation, which I'm sure all our stakeholders were able to truly appreciate. I've been observing the comments as well as the questions, which we're going to get into. You said when you started, you would have wished that you have a face-to-face interaction with all the stakeholders. So unfortunately, it's a face-to-voice this time, and yes, this COVID situation is causing amawaza these days. So, and I hope that everybody was able to really get a presentation and appreciated what you really are seeking to do instead of just working all by yourself but really appearing out there to the stakeholders and saying, as an administrator, I want your engagement fully, and you are really charting a new path, in my view, a path that really talks to an interactive and a cooperative engagement and assisting to bring about quality to the Ceta and really moving it from where it was to the next phase before handing over. Thank you so much, Mr. Wasa. I want to open up for questions that will be directed both at Mr. Valo and Mr. Wasa in terms of their presentation. I've been seeing quite a lot of questions asked, and as well as positive comments. But I want to start with this, which I have seen M&G has already tried to answer. I think Johan has been asking quite a lot of questions about this. This is a sustainable dialogue, which means it will go on beyond this webinar. I think this is just to re-emphasize what the administrator has already said. The aim is to discuss ideas to revive the economy, and Ceta will invite all those with ideas to communicate with them, so that one of the ways in which the dialogue will be sustained, obviously, is, as the administrator has said, the weekly communication and the stakeholder portal that I think he has really emphasized on. And Ceta will as well be employing other communication methods to stay close to the stakeholders so that there is valuable input gained. So I want to, Mr. Mvalo and Wasa, if we can, I'm just going to try by all means to engage quite a number of questions that our stakeholders have asked by going back to where they've tried to ask questions. And please bear with us because we cannot answer all the questions, but I'm sure that we can be able to answer quite a number of questions that you as stakeholders have fielded. Perhaps you can start there with with Trini. So what is the position with regards to new accreditations? May I please take an omnibus of at least 3 questions if we can, so that one, you'll be able to pick up between the two of you gentlemen. So I've already highlighted the one that Trini has asked, and there is one from Johan Vaskasbeck. Will the Ceta put a tender out for the monitoring software for Ceta? And the last that I'm going to take right now will be, let me just go up. I can see, Johan, you've asked quite a lot of questions. We'll try by all means, but just to mix so that we can have other people questions answered as well. If we can go to Mr. Vicus Duplessis. Good day, Mr. Wasa. Thank you for the feedback on payments to training providers. I would just like to have an understanding how the lost time, around 3 months of training, and can I have M&G not push down these questions? Because whilst I'm reading, it tends to go down. Thank you. Around 3 months of training and/or workplace exposure should be dealt with. The program allocation is for 12 months, and your finance department has paid funds to stakeholders, and it will then reflect as part of the 12 months. In reality, the 12 months training intervention has been shortened to 9 months, as yet 3 months has been lost. Funds for extension will be a challenge. I think that is a question by Mr. Duplessis. Can I just hand over to you, gentlemen? You will pick up between the two of you, whichever the question that you want to pick up.
Okay, thank you very much, Project Program Director. Let me just say that this is the first of many engagements to come. So people who might not be, that we might not be able to answer should not despair and think that it was a waste of their time to attend. We will, as much as possible, attend to these questions. One of the things that we are planning to do is to issue newsletters that are gonna be specific to subsectors, at least on a weekly basis, as much as we can. We have designed a media strategy, as a way, as well as stakeholder engagement strategy that we will be rolling out. So this engagement is the first of many engagements that we'll be having in various forms. For instance, August is a Women's Month, and we are engaging with SAWIC that we have different programs that are focusing on women and young women in that. So we will be having a lot of engagement with that. But because we have been left out, in June, being a youth month, we had hoped that we are going to have number of engagements with young people and share with them what it is that we are planning as Construction Ceta and how they can become beneficiaries of Construction Ceta. The first question by Qiniso, relating to accreditation. We have issued a circular addressing this matter of accreditation. We have had a blanket extension which was approved by QCTO on accreditations. All those accreditations that had expired during the COVID-19 different lockdowns, we have been having an extension until I think 2023, as a blanket one. For new accreditations, as you know, that part of the work that we must do before we can accredit is to do site visits, and these are difficult under the COVID-19 circumstances. So what we have been doing is to ask people to submit as much information as possible, and we give accreditations, but we have a rider that says as COVID-19 lockdowns or levels of lockdowns lowers, we will then be doing the site visits. So the accreditation is given as a conditional one until such time that we do the site visits. Of course, if the site visits is not satisfactory, we might withdraw that accreditation. So that is what we are doing at the moment with regard to accreditations. Johan, the issue of training and the time that we have lost, and the payments relating to that, we're not holding all the answers with regard to what we're supposed to be doing. As you know, that nobody has got any experience about COVID-19 and what it has thrown to us. But what we have been doing is understanding that, and that's the reason why Mr. Mvalo and the team had been on us to say, relook at your APP, relook at your budget, relook at your strategies, and so on. And we have been doing a lot of that during these couple of months, because one of the challenges that we have, for instance, is we could not have ignored learners and say, we're not going to pay stipends because you are not attending classes. But they still have to go through that training, and still we have to pay for their time when they go through that. So the way that we have now revised our budget was to take into consideration those realities. And of course, one of the engagements that we are having with the service providers or training providers is to say to them, let's work together to have a catch-up plan and find a way of how we're going to be funding that catch-up plan. However, we are going to be very strict because we don't want people who would not have done proper job before COVID-19 now taking the advantage of COVID-19 to extend training. Because as you know that the reality of the matter is that this system of Cetas have got a lot of money, and people really are after the money in most instances, rather than being driven by the zeal to deliver skills development. And therefore we are awake to that reality, and therefore we would like to work with genuine people who have an interest of skills development delivery at heart, rather than people who want to extend their participation in this Ceta system and making more money. So that is that. With regard to the monitoring and evaluation, whether we're going to be going out for a software and all of that, I think that it will be that will be a culmination of a process. What we are trying to do now is to institutionalize monitoring and evaluation. As you know, that monitoring and evaluation has been used loosely within the Ceta space. That people think that monitoring is the same thing as the evaluation. But what we are trying to do here is to institutionalize monitoring and evaluation. So everything that we do must have a monitoring and evaluation flavor in it. As to whether that will then emanate to us having to put up an electronic enabler for that monitoring and evaluation. Of course, the overarching theme that we are trying to push is for us to really move in the true sense to the fourth industrial revolution, which COVID-19 has forced us to do. But ordinarily, Cetas are supposed to have been there for years already. So we will look into that, and it could be, the outcome of the process that we are busy with. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wansa. Mr. Mvalo.
Program Director, I think Mr. Wasa has captured quite very well the important issues. All what I want also to emphasize on is that the announcement by the President on the 21st of April 2020 of the skills development holiday, which in terms of our calculations is equal to 6.1 billion. If we look into all Cetas across the system, our anticipation or projection was to get a levy of about 19.4 billion. But then came, COVID-19, uninvited, of course, in our shores with all its implications. And now we had to do away with 6.4 billion in all Cetas across the country. So, and what had happened is like what Mr. Wasa is saying, we issued as well a communique that was as early as in April, whereby we directed that all Cetas, they must ensure that stipends are being paid under alert level 5, whereupon almostly, the economy was not working. And we know, as was stated here, that not all economic sectors, have opened, especially under alert level 3. And Cetas now are battling, with this. They have lost about 6.4 billion, and they must continue the training. Of course, we fully agree that if someone has entered, let's say, learnership or apprenticeship or the like, that person must complete that program. Because if that program is not completed, that will be equal to wasteful expenditure. So that is why then, therefore, the administrator is saying there is going to be more communication with stakeholders. And I must also implore, because other colleagues, stakeholders, were saying for the first time to hear that the construction Ceta is under administration. Yes, it might be, it's the way that we are communicating, because we have done a publication in the Government Gazette that was on the 3rd February 20. And then obviously, as I said earlier on, administrator wanted to meet with stakeholders in his in February, but then of course, then there were court cases, and then also came later, the national state of disaster. So that is why the administrator and the Ceta, could not have maybe a roadshows across the country, so that all stakeholders are informed. And then I will advise colleagues, if they do not have a copy of the Gazette, they can also approach the Ceta so that they get the copy of the Gazette and be serving all the duties and responsibilities of the administrator within, of course, the prescript of the Skills Development Act. It's only that program director I wanted to at least, give some amplification. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mvalo. I think we're still doing very well on time. We are left with about 14 minutes before our webinar is over. I would like us to perhaps take the next 10 minutes to answer again a number of questions. I'm going to just read these questions for you. One, Constance Gumede from CSG Investments. The question is, last year in May, I applied for extension of scope. Till today, I haven't received a response from the construction Ceta. I think she has got a second question where she says, certificates for learners who completed their training last year in October still are not received, and this is a huge negative impact on them from benefiting from any job. So I'm going to take this other one as well. From Selo Musi, I want clarity on COIDA letter of good standing for TVET colleges for beneficiaries who must be placed at workplaces for the on-job training. I think Rupa Sijiram is commenting and commending basically, or rather commenting about the economic status as well as the COVID-19 and the job opportunities. So that's just a comment. Thank you, Rupa. Marina Hendricks, hello. When will Ceta consult with the regulatory bodies such as SACAP to ensure that their necessary competencies will be aligned and addressed with the Ceta qualifications? And my last, if I may, from Blessing Ndlazi, I request for the right direction regarding registration with different Cetas as a facilitator. I think Mr. Ndlazi just wants to know how do you facilitate and moderate. If I can take just very last one, from Alec Clark, did Ceta decide what percentage of rebates will be given back as mandatory grants based on the court judgments? Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I just want to pick up on a question that I think is one of the very important questions. I might not have gotten the name of the person who had asked the question, but the issue about when are we going to be engaging with the professional bodies, and she had mentioned the specific one. I think that, ma'am, is a very important question. I thought that it was a lady who had asked the question, and that's the reason why we have started engagement with CPE, and all the built environment professions are falling under CPE, and we actually are busy doing a study which we are supporting for CPE on throughput rates, starting from learners at high school level who have an interest in pursuing built environment professions, and further to that, all the learners that are at universities pursuing built environment. What is the throughput rate of these learners, and finally a throughput rate for candidacy, because you would note that people tend to have a very long time in candidacy programs, to an extent that others give up without obtaining the professions. And we are working with the CPE in this regard. We are finalizing a memorandum of active partnership with a CPE. We don't want to call it a memorandum of understanding, because by the end of my term we will still be understanding each other. So we're calling it a memorandum of active partnership, because we want to partner with a CPE and work with them to really look at the curriculum of what it is that you're supposed to be studying during the candidacy program for you to qualify as a professional within the built environment space. And I think that is a very important question, is one of those that we have identified, because candidacy programs within the built environment space seems to differ, depending on which profession you are pursuing. One of the important things that we are engaging with, and SALGA is also involved in this engagement, is that you've got professions that are pertinent in local government, and these professions seems not to have a proper home, and that is town planning, for instance, land surveyors, and I mean, if we are, and this is a big transformation issue, and that is, since 1994, the apartheid spatial planning is still intact, and we are losing an opportunity through skills development of influencing the town planners, the land surveyors who are supporting local government to allocate land for proper spatial planning. And as a result of that, apartheid spatial planning still remains unchallenged. And one of the important things that we are dealing with CPE is to start engaging in these areas, and we start transforming properly South Africa. And this is the skills development is the golden opportunity for us to influence transformation in the South African society. So that question, ma'am, is extremely important, and it's if we are to deal with the issue of transformation across the professions in the construction space, we have to deal with that question. And thank you very much for it. The other question is relating to COITA. I'm not sure what the question is with regard to that, but let me say what I understand the reason for requiring COITA is. If you are to be going to any site, construction site, there must be a certificate of good standing, so that those people that will be walking into those sites are protected, whether these are people that are there for training or people that are there for whatever other reason. So it's important to have the COITA for people who are running different sites, and it's important from our perspective, because our learners must must be trained under safe environments, and therefore COITA becomes very important. The lady that had asked first two questions about the extension of scope, I think I have tried to deal with this aspect. The extension of scope is going to be considered if there is merit to it, and I would not know about your specific case, but I would happy to look at it and see to what an extent that it can be accommodated. But as I said, that if people have been for whatever other reason not doing what they were supposed to do, and now they are taking the advantage of COVID-19 to have their project extended and so on, that would not be looked at favorably, I must say now. But if there is a reason genuine enough for that work not to be done properly, we would consider. People would know that, for instance, there has been a UIF project that we have been running in Ceta, and I know that there are a number of things that went terribly wrong there, and I have refused to have extension granted to the training providers for obvious reasons, and I mean, people who are interested can engage me on the site with regard to this. Certification of learners, as I've already mentioned, that is one of the things that we are focusing on. I have got a Mrs. Mashiho, who is my advisor on quality assurance, a very able lady who is dealing with this issue of certification. It's a very important issue. We recognize the difficulties that people are experiencing of going through training, and then at completion they are unable to get the certificates, and therefore their opportunity of securing proper jobs is limited, and therefore we are really focusing on helping in dealing with this issue of certification. As I'm saying, we are working very closely with NEMP, and we are working very closely with QCTO, and we have done a lot of work in this regard. Mr. McNamara of IOPSA would attest to this, because I have met with him. He was very frustrated getting all sorts of queries from different learners and so on, and we have been working very hard in this area in trying to resolve the problems. Thanks, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wasa. I know we've got 3 minutes left. May I just get yours, Mr. Mvano?
I just wanted Program Director to comment on Alec. Alec was asking, as to whether the Ceta has already made a determination with regard to a mandatory grant, of which we know when I was explaining earlier on, I made mention that as the department, we received a legal opinion, which then said to us, that Regulation 4, Sub-Regulation 4, is the one that is set aside by the court, implying then, therefore, other regulations and sub-regulations, whether we're dealing with, the administration, which is equal to 10.5%, or else, discretionary grant, which is equal to 49.5%. So they remain those ones intact. But then, obviously, there is a submission that is en route to the minister, so that we can make a communication to all sitters. I know the Office of the Auditor General has also inquired with us to say, can you please give guidance to sitters? In as much as if you read your Regulation 4, Sub-Regulation 1, it gives an authority to a sitter to make, a determination in terms of the mandatory grant in the absence of any prescript. So that is what then now we've been relying on to say, well, obviously we know the amount that is left is 20%. If one went to discretionary grant, and one went to administration. Obviously, you are left there with a 20%. Because we do not want also to, to be seen, as acting, in defiance with the court judgment. So to say to the sitters, well, the minister now cannot say to the sitters, you pay 20%, but we know what is available is 20%, because others, they are not available. Your 49.5% or your 10.5%. But then I must say, Alec, we will be also making communications to all sitters. The minister is going to be considering that communication, because also the Auditor General is looking for an answer with regard to this, so that there can be a standard or uniformity into all sitters across the country. Thanks very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mvalo. We are right on our 12 o'clock time. I first of all must say just a few closing issues. Definitely, as the administrator has already mentioned, there is going to be a portal and the communication that is going to be going on from now going forward. And to all the stakeholders, we must emphasize that this is the launch of a dialogue. We know that we may have not covered all your questions, and I must appreciate that there's been a lot of positive comments in terms of the work that you are doing, Mr. Wasa, in terms of communicating with the stakeholders, as well as with you, Mr. Mvalo, in terms of giving the background and really driving this Ceta positively going forward. This is the last, because we have to respect time. I think it's 12 o'clock, Mr. Wasa. We want to further just thank Ceta as well as Bayete plus the Mail and Guardian for really helping us. And thank you so much. Let's talk on the portal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.